Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I almost said Highway to Hoover there. I had to take a second to remember what show I was doing. It's that time of year when the brain is it's a lot going on in there. I'm trying to keep my head on a swivel. But yes, I'm here to take you through all of Friday's SEC games in regionals. Regional weekend is here. I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. Before we get into anything specific, though, let me remind you that today's episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer with a flavor with a grill, prep for fishing weekend, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. Academy came through in the clutch for me last week in Hoover. I packed poorly and there was an Academy across the street from my hotel, and so I went and got some more articles of clothing for the week. So thank you to Academy Sports and Outdoors for pulling me through. All right, folks. Like I said, regional weekend is here. I've got 13 SEC games to run through for today. We have starting pitching information for most of them, not all of them. We'll talk a little bit about the pitchers. We'll talk about things to look for. Hopefully get you fully ready for Regional Friday by the time we're done here. Comment already in here, Todd Harris. I'm live and in person here in Clemson with Bradley Smart for my Batcats. I'm ready for boys to take down WVU. But that's going to be one of the more fun SEC regional games today. Kentucky and West Virginia. Some familiarity there with WVU having been in Lexington 2 years ago. 2 years, yeah, 2 years ago. Very different teams, obviously. I don't think there's any sort of carryover from that, but it is interesting. WVU, a very good team, so that should be a lot of fun. And yes, Bradley Smart is covering Clemson. Also, if you're Todd and all of your fellow Batcat supporters, you'll have to prepare yourself for games at Clemson are an experience. I'll put it that way. It's pretty much constant music, like between pitches. They play music between just about every pitch, so it is constant. So after a while, it does kind of drown out, like it just becomes background noise. But it's a lot. All right. Got some other comments in here already. Let's run through them real quick. Sean Miller says, what? I didn't know we were doing this for regional weekend. Woohoo. Yep. Keep with the same format the rest of the way through, all the way through Omaha, in fact. So I can't leave you guys hanging for the postseason. What, are you kidding me? So we'll do today, tomorrow, Sunday. Same thing, super regionals. Same thing in Omaha, which, Omaha's a little weird because there might be days where there's not an SEC team playing. I mean, probably because there'll be enough there, but you never know, just based on the schedule and so, but we'll still find a way to do it. We'll talk about other stuff if we have to. But I'm just going to keep up this Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule with waypoints all the way through. Sean also says best sports day of the year, March Sadness can suck it. Carl Dunn, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Carl. Regional baseball is here, and of course, chance of rain. I mean, look, it wouldn't be regional weekend, Carl, if it weren't for chances of rain. Speaking of which, I mean, here in Auburn, I'm looking out the window, and it doesn't look great. There's been some rain in the forecast all week. It has lightened a little bit, the forecast has here in Auburn, so I'm confident we're going to get the 2 in today. Might just have to be a little patient about it. I'm not thrilled about that, but it is what it is. Papa Dragon says these next few hours are the slowest all year. Yeah, I kind of tend to agree. Liz says squeeze play for me until Tennessee tonight. That is a great plan, Liz. I would urge others to do that. Of course, our friend Mike Rooney on there with Matt Schick, Chris Budden involved, Chris Burke involved. A lot of fun folks on Squeeze Play. Always that's kind of like my second screen. I'm watching the game that I'm covering, but then I'll put my headphones in and have on my laptop Squeeze Play, just kind of in the background. So that's my strategy as well. Jeremy Scott, Roll Tide should have been a host. Is there less pressure not hosting? There can be. I mean, you want to host just because your draw. You play a 4 your first game. Yada yada. But there can be less pressure, certainly. So there might be something to that. I mean, sometimes the players also like the opportunity to go play somewhere else, and in front of a road, with the road environment. And Hattiesburg that'll be popping, like as the kids would say, because I mean that's Hattiesburg loves to host, and so I'm sure even for games that don't involve USM, I think there'll be a lot of folks in there. Okay. Sean says, I was just about to roll Tide for Jeremy in case he didn't make it, but he's here. Yeah, Jeremy did make it in. Todd says about Clemson, I've heard it's a little much with the music, but bring it on. It'll be sweeter once we win the Clemson regional. It should be a really fun and lively atmosphere. Can we get 13-0 for the SEC today? I mean, we could. I mean, statistically speaking, right? Like we could. That'll be interesting to track, though, as we go on, just the league's record as they advance through regionals. But yes, your point is well taken, though, Todd. Like, it is a fun atmosphere at Clemson. I was there for the Super against Florida last year, and it is a pretty one-of-one experience in terms of atmosphere. And I hear it's even better this year because they've done some renovations. Last year they hadn't done the renovations yet. So, it should be fun if nothing else. Sean says, first time anyone wearing a Cactus Arizona retiree shirt has ever said it'll be poppin'. That might be true. That's probably true, actually. Brought out the cactus shirt. I'm pouring one out for Arizona because they didn't host. That's why I have the cactus shirt. Great logo Arizona has with the cactus. The basketball logo they use sometimes. The sun and the cactus. All right, let's get into some of these games. Keep your comments coming. I'll circle back with them at the end of talking about the games. But let's jump into it. These are in chronological order, at least as far as unless I made a mistake, but I'm looking at it now. Yeah, and I think I did a good job. Look at that. Look at Joe go. So yeah, in chronological order. So they're not in order of seed line or anything like that. We get started with a couple games at noon Eastern, 11 Central. That's in about an hour and a half. Georgia against Binghamton in Athens. Jack DeLongshaw, the pencil talk guy, will be flops on the ground, as he would say, in Athens. So he will have all kinds of video content. It'll be fun to have him there. All kinds of video content that'll come out of that weekend. So looking forward to seeing what he cooks up, and I'm sure you guys are as well. It's a lot of fun whenever he's on site. Leighton Finley on the mound for Georgia against Brady Bouchard for Binghamton. On paper, a lot of things you like about this matchup for Georgia, up to and including that Brady Bouchard has an ERA of 8.78. Maybe there's something that we don't know about Brady Bouchard, but Binghamton had starters with better numbers. Maybe there's something about the matchup. I'm not really sure. Either way, that's the pitching matchup there. Georgia and Binghamton here in about an hour and a half. Also starting in about an hour and a half, Florida taking on East Carolina. That is in Conway. Aaron Fitt will be on hand in Conway all weekend long. Liam Peterson on the mound for Florida. So sticking with the traditional rotation for Florida against East Carolina's Connor Norby. And I think that's probably part of the reason why Florida is sticking with the traditional rotation, because Connor Norby is very good. I mean, he had a game earlier this season, early March, where he struck out 20, I think, 19, something like that. He's not been that consistent this year, week over week, but it does show what he's capable of if he's on his game. I have to imagine that's part of the reason why Sully felt compelled to put Liam Peterson out there. And just knowing that you may have to match Connor Norby 0 for 0 for a while until you're able to get him out of the game. And I think Florida will eventually get Norby out of the game. That one outing not accepted. He's typically someone who's not the most efficient, doesn't get as deep into games as others. He pitched in the bullpen for a while this season. So you should get to see an ECU bullpen if you're Florida at some point. Again, that starts in about 90 minutes. Kentucky, West Virginia. We talked about it just a little bit here. That's in Clemson. Bradley Smart on hand. Kentucky has not named Nick Mingione's kind of official thing on this is they're not going to name starting pitchers throughout the postseason. But, with the way Kentucky's used its starting pitchers, we have some guesses, right? It's going to be one of Nate Harris, Nick McKay, or Ben Cleaver. Can just about guarantee that. And I assume for West Virginia, Griffin Kern, he's been their top starting pitcher all season for West Virginia. Again, fun game. Don't know what to make of that one. Two good teams. I think, either one could give Clemson a handful in this regional. Obviously playing in a place that has the home field advantage. Like Clemson is obviously going to be difficult, but both of those teams, I think, capable of getting it done. Again, that game is at 1 Eastern and 12 Central. At 2 Eastern and 1 Central, Texas taking on Houston Christian. Kendall will be on hand in Austin this weekend. The wall is fixed, first and foremost. They really hustled to get the center field wall fixed at Texas. And for those who didn't see it, bad storm rolled through Austin a couple days ago and knocked down the batter's eye, just straight up knocked it over. Crews worked, I assume, basically 24/7, and that's really all they had time for was 24 hours, basically. Or I guess they had 48, but you get my point. Like, there was no choice but to just kind of, just work in shifts until you get it done. But they got it done yesterday. It looked great. Kudos to the folks at Texas for doing what needed to be done to get that fixed. Ethan Walker on the mound for Texas. You may remember him as the guy who took the mound for Texas in that game against Tennessee in Hoover. He started opposite Liam Doyle and did a nice job, honestly. And you wonder then if this was what they were setting up for, was the possibility that, hey, if we can get away with starting somebody other than their top guys in a regional opener, obviously that would set them up for success. So Ethan Walker on the mound. He'll face Parker Edwards, who is Houston Christian's really best overall player, in addition to being their best starting pitcher, also leads the team in home runs. So fun two-way guy there for Houston Christian. And kudos to Houston Christian for making the tournament. Great story there. First-year coach, Vanderlaan, although he was on staff under Lance Berkman, but first-year, first-year head coach, I should say. 3 Eastern, 2 Central in Hattiesburg, Alabama versus Miami. Walter Villa is going to be there on hand writing about it. And that's a treat, having Walter Villa at your site, because he writes about college baseball differently. He writes in a style that's very much his own, so you're going to get something a little bit different there. Riley Quick on the mound for Alabama. AJ Siskar on the mound for Miami. A big part of their turnaround this season was AJ Siskar being moved to the rotation. 3.77 ERA on the season for Siskar. Should be a good pitching matchup there with both of those guys on their game. Also at 3 Eastern, 2 Central in Baton Rouge, LSU taking on Little Rock. I assume I confirmed this, so I shouldn't say I assume. Little Rock starting Jackson Wells, that's their dude, that's their guy. Interesting career for Jackson Wells. This was noted by some of the LSU media yesterday that the only pitcher in the country who had a better ERA than Paul Skeens in 2023 was Jackson Wells of Little Rock. Last year, obviously came in with a lot of fanfare and had a tough year. And then this year, the stats aren't super pretty, but he's been better than he was last year. ERA is 5.24. But I think the most important point there with Jackson Wells is that this is Little Rock's guy. This is the guy they want on the mound in the biggest game this program has had in more than a decade. So he's going to compete. We'll see if it's good enough to keep him in the game or not, but he's going to compete. So that's the matchup there. LSU, I've not seen a starter as of right this minute just yet, but Jay tends to be a traditionalist, Jay Johnson, with his pitching rotation. So I would imagine it would be, Cade Anderson, and if not, one of their frontline guys. That's just the assumption I'm working with there. Arkansas and North Dakota State, 3 Eastern, 2 Central in Fayetteville. Aiden Jimenez on the mound for Arkansas, a guy that has been so good out of the bullpen this season, such a revelation for that team. And Damian Horn talked about this decision yesterday a little bit, and one of the reasons kind of given is that they kind of always saw him as a potential starter. Just obviously with Arkansas's options, that really hasn't been on the table, and Jimenez had been so good in the bullpen, you obviously want him to continue in that role. And so this will be interesting. I'm kind of interested to see it. And there's a scenario where if Aiden, and we're putting the cart before the horse here, but if Aiden Jimenez comes back to Arkansas for next season, he is draft eligible, but if he comes back, I could very well see a scenario where, Aiden Jimenez is a weekend guy for them. Perhaps this is a little bit of a preview of that. North Dakota State will counter with Nolan Johnson. Has a 4.14 ERA. He's been really good of late, though. He's been better than that ERA suggests of late. Good changeup You're going to have to be ready to hit a changeup if Nolan Johnson's changeup is on. That is a very, very good pitch. Jumping a couple of hours to 5 Eastern, 4 Central in Chapel Hill. This is the first of the night games for SEC teams. Malachi Witherspoon for Oklahoma against Jackson Brockett for Nebraska. 3.41 ERA for Brockett this year. Oklahoma with the decision to start Malachi instead of Kyson. I like it. I've talked about this before, but I'm firmly on team what gives you the best chance to win the regional, not to win a game. And this is that for Oklahoma. That they're going to have to, they're very likely to have to deal, if they win this game, deal with North Carolina in the winner's bracket in the 1-0 game. And with that being the case, what gives you, anybody who's followed college baseball knows that getting to 2-0 in a regional, that's the ticket. That's what you're looking for. So what's most likely to get you there? And in this case, it's Kyson on Saturday night against UNC in Chapel Hill. So that's what they're doing. And Malachi certainly, it's not like, it's not like they reached for somebody who hasn't pitched this year, right? Like Malachi's gotten better as the season has gone on. I think Oklahoma has a great deal of confidence in him, and they should, in him being able to beat Nebraska. That should be a lot of fun in Chapel Hill. At 6 Eastern, 5 Central, Vanderbilt against Wright State. Patrick Ebert will be in Nashville for this regional. J.D. Thompson on the mound for Vanderbilt. Tim Corbin, another coach that tends to be pretty traditional with the way he uses his rotations in regionals, regardless of the opponent and the seeding, all that stuff. And I think there's something to be said, and I was talking to Aria Gerson of the Tennessean last night about this, that there's something to the idea that the biggest advantage for Vanderbilt is not necessarily to have your best guy on Saturday night against your 2 seed in this regional, although that obviously is one that would be an advantage. But the bigger advantage might actually be getting through this Wright State game with as few relievers used as possible. And J.D. Thompson gives Vanderbilt that opportunity, that if he pitches well, you may not have to use any bullpen or, a guy and probably not even one of your top guys, right? If he pitches well. So that's the idea here, or at least that's my perception of the idea. And I like it. Again, that's just because you're not holding your ace doesn't mean you are not optimizing your pitching based on what you need. A little extra water this morning. I feel a little dry this morning, so trying to down some extra water. All right. In Knoxville, 6 Eastern, 5 Central, Burke Granger is going to be on the ground in Knoxville. Tennessee against Miami, Ohio. Liam Doyle on the mound, another head coach going with, keeping the same rotation. Liam Doyle against, I assume for Miami, Cooper Katsky. Very good pitcher for Miami, Ohio. Pitchability guy, high 80s fastball, low 90s. Not going to necessarily blow Tennessee's doors off, but 2.66 ERA this season. So a very good pitcher. He threw a complete game in the MAC tournament against Kent State that got Miami to the final of the MAC tournament. That should be a interesting matchup to see what a pitcher like Katsky, who's a very good mid-major pitcher, can do against a talented physical lineup like Tennessee. That's at 6 Eastern, 5 Central in Knoxville. The game I will be at, involving an SEC team, Auburn against Central Connecticut State. That's at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Cam Tilley on the mound for Auburn. Feels like a move that makes a lot of sense. Not using Dutton, saving Dutton for a Saturday game, the assumed winner's bracket game. But Cam Tilley obviously more than capable of beating Central Connecticut State. So it's not like Butch is really reaching for the back of the pitching staff and bringing in Cam Tilley, a guy who's going to have to pitch big games this postseason if Auburn's going to get back to Omaha. So they need him. They'll give him a shot here. Drew Munn on the mound for Central Connecticut, 4.34 ERA this season. Not a strikeout guy, something like 50 strikeouts in 74 innings and change. A pitch to contact guy. He's going to try to get quick outs, soft contact, all of that stuff, but not going to be a guy that's going to throw it past you. Mississippi State at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central in Tallahassee. We'll take on Northeastern. Jared Morris is on the ground for us there to cover that one. Ben Davis on the mound for Mississippi State. Kind of a little bit of a curveball there by Justin Parker to throw a reliever in Ben Davis, but obviously one who's quite capable. And then Jordan Gottesman for Northeastern. Northeastern, the hottest team in college baseball, 27, 28 straight wins, whatever it is. So Mississippi State's going to play well to win this one. Be interested to see what Northeastern we get, like the one that in the regular season one has this massive winning streak, or the Northeastern that's gone 0-6 in its 3 regionals in the last 7 years. They typically, when they've gotten to regionals, have not played that well, even though they've been talented enough to make runs. Let's see if this year is a little bit different. By the way, Mississippi State made some waves yesterday. Brian O'Connor, supported by Kendall Rogers, confirmed by a number of others that Brian O'Connor is their target, and that it's one of those deals where it's not officially official, but sure seems like it's trending that way, and everyone's just kind of waiting for Mississippi State season to be over and all that, right? So, and maybe Mississippi State will play free, right? Like Justin Parker knows he's not getting the job. Mississippi State knows, like, hey, this is our last hurrah with all these guys together, this coaching staff, all of that. So maybe that frees them up. We'll see. And then the last game of the day, chronologically, Ole Miss against Murray State. That's at 8 Eastern, 7 Central in Oxford. Riley Maddox on the mound for Ole Miss against Murray State's Nick Schutte. 4.02 ERA for Schutte of Murray State. One of their 2 guys. They got 2 workhorses in the rotation. He is one of them. Riley Maddox going to have to come ready to play. Murray State, very good offense. Maddox, obviously, we know he's a good strike thrower, but he's going to have to keep the ball off the barrel because Murray State can really hit. And you could see this game getting high scoring early. So I'm kind of interested. I'm kind of glad this is the last game of the night because of the 1-4s, this is one of the ones I'm most interested in because I do think the matchup of Ole Miss's pitching staff, which has been pitching so well, including in Hoover, against this Murray State offense that, is good and talented and also is going to be looking to prove something in this game in Oxford. All right, so that's the rundown. I'm going to go over to comments. There are a whole bunch waiting, so we're going to sift through these. I'm sure some is just conversation between you guys, which I love to see. Got a Hail State and Roll Tide from Call Out. He also says he'll be watching Squeeze play. That's the right move. Inside LSU baseball with Jason Armstrong says better chance of survival a mouse placed into a Burmese python's aquarium or Little Rock. I'd say about equal. Of course, we've been fooled before. You got to be you got to take every opponent seriously in regionals. I'll never forget growing up in Houston, the year after Rice won the national title. They were a high national seed. I don't know what number. Maybe they were number 1. Texas Southern was in their regional, and Texas Southern was like, they won the SWAC auto bid, but Texas Southern overall was like 18-35 or something. And it was a nasty game, that first game, like rain. There was a long rain delay, and it was just the ground was waterlogged, and just one of those games where there was a weird air to the game even before the big hit. But a guy named Herman Coachman came on late and hit a 3-run home run. I think it was a 3-run home run to give Texas Southern a lead, and they held on. They beat Rice. I think it was 4-3. So anything can happen. You got to take every team seriously. But your point is well taken, Jason. Like, yes, that is a tough draw for Little Rock. Trying to go to the box to get something done. And it is a pretty, I call out, I see your comment there, like, it is one of the softer regionals. No disrespect to Rhode Island, that's had a really good year. But they're more like a 4. Their RPI is a little bit higher than that, so they got seeded as a 3, understandably so. But that's a team that's traditionally a 4. Really good ace for Rhode Island. Last name is Levesque. I can't remember his first name, but obviously LSU is not going to see him because he's going to go against DBU. So. Call out says love Jack. Do love Jack. Good guy, really good guy. Jack, what you see is what you get. Like, his persona on camera is not that different from what you get off camera, but in a lovely way. Genuine guy, super nice guy, a super intelligent guy. If you see him at the ballpark, say hello. He's always happy to say hello to folks. Sean Miller Really want to see Georgia versus Binghamton, Upstate versus Clemson, Columbia versus Southern Miss, Murray State versus Ole Miss. Yeah, Columbia Southern Miss should be a good one too. Columbia always a tough 4. Upstate and Clemson. Yeah, I've seen that Upstate team up close, and they're good. We'll see if they're good enough to be competitive this weekend and maybe get something done. But they are good. I'll take your word on Binghamton. Maybe I'll watch that game. I mean, it starts early, so there won't be much on yet, and I don't know anything about Binghamton really, to be honest. Carl Dunn asked, "Did you say Bobby Boucher?" I close to it. It was Brady Bouchard. It's like if Bobby Boucher was like in witness protection or something they give. Although I guess in witness protection they would find a name that wasn't so close to your original one. Sean Miller says, and this is in regards to Jason's comment about Little Rock. Be careful, Jason. You're attempting Stony Brook coastal type vibes if you get too ahead of yourself. But I agree. Yeah, LSU fans don't have to be reminded about 4 seeds there. Colin asked about, is that Connor Norby, the Miami Marlins brother? It is. Yeah, there's a couple of families that have played, and he's talking about Connor Norby is what is the other Norby's name? Well, hang on. I realized that what is Ethan Norby? Thank you. That Ethan Norby, not Connor Norby. That'd be something if the Miami Marlins Connor Norby was pitching for East Carolina. But you can see how I make that mistake. Ethan Norby on the mound for East Carolina. Thank you, Call. I don't know if that was your point in asking that, but but I realized, oh, wait a minute, Connor Norby's the one in the big leagues. But yeah, they've had a couple Norbys there. They've also had the Agnos family, Jake and Zach brothers there. And with the way the Norbys have played at East Carolina, Cliff Godwin is probably desperately searching around for other Norby brothers that are out hanging around. But yes, Connor Norby, Ethan Norby brothers. Todd says, lots of rain hitting 12 to 3 p.m. here in Clemson. Wonder if they delay the game or start it and jeopardize the starting pitchers having to stop after 2 or 3 innings. I know LSU wouldn't start, i.e. Skeens versus Kentucky. Yeah, especially in the postseason. I think you tend to want to be conservative with starting a game. If you're going to start a game, I think you need to be confident you're going to get at least most of it in before the rain hits. We're kind of in a similar situation here in Auburn where the rain chances kind of pop. I haven't looked this morning, but as of last night, the rain chances kind of pop at like noon and 1, and that's right about when the game is going to start. So they'll have a similar decision to make here as well. Ryan says, OU not throwing Kyson versus Nebraska is a bold decision. If it works, throwing Malachi, Kyson versus Knapp will be amazing. Yep. If it backfires, Nebraska wins, what does OU do? Throw Kyson in the elimination game? Probably, and that's for a couple reasons. One is, obviously it's a game. At that point, it's a game for your life. And if regionals were single elimination, I would probably advocate for aces to throw game 1 for everybody. So when you're in an elimination situation, you've got Kyson, I think you just throw him. You got to make sure, because the other thing is, if you lose that game, you're going to go 0-2 and not have thrown your best pitcher. I get why you might do that. And again, if that pays off, it could work if you save him for, an elimination game Sunday morning or whatever. But the risk, though, of just not using him seems too big. So yeah, if Malachi can't get it done against Nebraska, or if Nebraska just outpitches him, then I would think you'd see Kyson in the elimination. I see Sean made a similar point there. I'm scrolling, sorry. Patrick Yankee says, what are Kentucky's chances today? I am feeling a Tyler Bell bomb today. Mark it down. Team USA's Tyler Bell, by the way. Don't know if you all saw that announcement, but no real surprise. But got named to the training camp roster for the collegiate national team this summer. I'll be doing a little work with the collegiate national team this summer, as a matter of fact, doing some broadcast color analyst work for the games they play in Cary. The Stars vs. Stripes series, but Tyler Bell, part of that. But I think Kentucky's got a good chance. West Virginia's not an easy opponent, but I think we saw late in the year, West Virginia got off to that absurd start, 37-5 or something like that. And then down the stretch, just totally, I don't want to say totally cratered, but because they still finished, at the top of the Big 12, but the pace slowed a lot late in the year. They just weren't the same team against some of the tougher teams they faced, Kansas State and Kansas and what have you. So I think West Virginia looked like it might just be a juggernaut of a team, not necessarily. So I like Kentucky's chances. It's a coin flip game at worst, I would say. One SEC team to get upset and not make it out of regionals. Who would you pick? Let's see. Well, I assume you mean among the hosts because, given that Kentucky is a 3 seed, right? Even though I just said I like them in this game, it's hard to pick a 3 seed to come out of a regional hosted by a good ACC team like that. So I assume you're meaning hosts. And I've said Ole Miss is the toughest regional because that Georgia Tech draw is just tough. It's a Georgia Tech team that could easily have hosted. It's a Georgia Tech team that won the ACC, Georgia Tech team that is trying to send its longtime coach off with one last trip to Omaha. And those things matter. I think those kind of intangible, emotional things, I think they end up mattering. And so I just think that's such a tough draw. And then the Murray State part of it where, there's even a scenario where even, Ole Miss maybe wins the game today, but has to use a bunch of bullpen to get it done. Like that obviously isn't necessarily what you're looking for in game one. But so that one's been tough. That's the toughest regional for me, hosted by an SEC school. So I guess I'd go that direction, but it's based less on comfort with the SEC team hosting because I was really impressed by Ole Miss and Hoover, and more just man, it's just a tough draw getting a 2 seed like Georgia Tech. Just Ryan asked about this. Wasn't directed at me, but he asked, "Do you have any concern with Malachi being a bit rusty since he didn't get to pitch in Hoover?" So my answer to that is a little bit, and that's part of the reason, at least the stated reason why he's pitching this opener. I think a lot of it is matchup based with holding Kyson, but I do think there is something to we want to get him out there ASAP. But I just think the coaching staff is going to be watching closely, and if he looks like not himself, I'm sure they're not going to be shy about making a move if they need to. But a little bit of concern, but maybe the rest will also be good. It is the time of year where everyone's a little just either fatigued or a little banged up, right? Just little stuff here and there. So perhaps the rest ends up actually being good for Malachi. Randall, LSU game day, indeed. Jeremy says Quick didn't pitch for Alabama and Hoover either. Yeah, so there's that, and that's part of the format, right? The single elimination. Now you have teams. Alabama played 2 games, but Arkansas played 1 game, right? And so they've got a bunch of guys who haven't thrown in a while. So yeah, that is one thing about the Hoover format I hadn't really considered is that if you don't get at least a couple of games in Hoover, you are going to be in a situation kind of annually where you've got guys that just haven't thrown yet. Call out mentions Pico Khan. Yeah, that's another guy. So yeah, it's just that's a piece that I think this first year we had that format, so it's something I hadn't really considered. Ryan says Arkansas will handle business today, but NDSU might be more competitive than expected. Their non-conference strength of schedule was absolutely brutal. They might be up to hang around better than expected. Yeah, I mean that. We're always going to get. There's always going to be a couple of games like that, right? We just don't know much about the 4 seed. Kind of just expect it to be a walkover, and there will be at least a couple of those today. Whether or not the 4 seeds can pull those upsets is another deal, but there are typically at least a couple of 4 seeds that make things uncomfortably close in a somewhat unexpected way. And yeah, I guess if NDSU was one of those, I wouldn't. I guess I wouldn't be surprised. All right. Colin says, what are your thoughts on Bama being able to win the Hattiesburg Regional? I like it a lot more. I've not seen who. I guess I could have looked this up, or you guys can comment if you've seen it. But I don't know who Southern Miss is starting in their opening game of the regional. But I say that because I like Bama's chances a lot more if they're not facing JB Middleton of Southern Miss in a winner's bracket game, because that guy's really good. ERA under 2, or right around 2 anyway. Led the Sun Belt in strikeouts. Really, really, really tough customer. And so, if Bama's prize for winning its opening game against Miami, which is a tough game in and of itself, because Miami for about now they tailed off, but for about a month there, Miami was as good as anybody, just kind of out of nowhere, and then they faded again. So it's like, okay, does Miami wake up with a good pitcher, AJ Siskar on the mound, and play really well? Maybe. But even if Alabama wins, if your reward for that is facing JB Middleton Saturday night, like, woof, that's tough. Now, if Southern Miss uses him today, and again, I haven't seen that, but I like Bama's chance a lot better. They've got a chance regardless, right? Because they had a case to host themselves, better than 500 in SEC play, obviously quite talented. If you told me Riley Quick and Zane Adams both throw great in these first 2 games and they are in the regional final, I'd totally believe it. So they've got a live chance. Obviously, that's not the pick there. I just think there's too much traffic, right? Like, obviously the host is good with Southern Miss, but then you've got a tricky 3 seed in Miami. Just, this isn't a situation where, like, if Alabama ends up seeing Miami again in a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon elimination game, you wouldn't necessarily feel confident that, like, oh, Bama can pitch off. There's some of those elimination games, like if a 4 seed ends up in that game, where you can kind of like throw the guys in the bullpen you don't necessarily think you're going to need in a regional final. That's not going to be the case if they end up playing Miami again. So it's just a tricky regional for Bama. So they can get out of it, but it's going to be a tough deal. Daniel Sargent says, does Kentucky win today? And let's go yes. Well, that's more fun, right? Let's go yes. I mean, truly, though, it is a toss-up game against West Virginia. I like their chances. I think, having been through the gauntlet this season of the SEC and had so many close games, they're battle-tested. So I think I like their chances, but it is a kind of a coin flip. Vandy Chris says, does it cause you concern for Tennessee, the possibility of having Phillips in the mound against a team like Cincinnati that is 128 of 142 and stolen bases? I wouldn't want him pitching versus them. I agree, and I talked about this a little bit with Mark on our most recent podcast, Highway to Hoover, earlier this week, that, Tony's a traditionalist, and so I'm not shocked they're starting Liam Doyle. But yeah, it does end up where if Cincinnati wins the 2-3 game against Wake Forest and end up in the winner's bracket game and Tennessee meets them there, yeah, you've got Marcus Phillips, a guy who's had so much trouble holding runners this season against a team that loves to run. That being said, he's been a little better the last couple of weeks, but I guess credit to Tennessee for being stubborn, and I don't mean that in a bad way necessarily, but just kind of like, just kind of being like, nope, we're going to stick with the same rotation, and we know we have issues with this, and we might see a team that can exploit it, but we're just going to stick with what we've got. Like, I do honestly give them some credit for that. Just kind of, hey, this is what brought us to the dance, and they're going to keep going with it. So, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, selfishly, I kind of want to see that, just because I do want to see if, like, is Marcus Phillips actually doing better holding runners, or is it just that they haven't played a team in a few weeks that's really been able to exploit it? I don't know. We'll see. So kind of selfishly, I do want to see that matchup, because I like little subplots like that. Call It says, do you think Florida wins the regional? I've heard Shelton is not back yet after they thought he would be. Yeah, I mean, I've heard similar. So yesterday, some of the local reporters for Florida were talking about. Hang on, I'm scrolling in the background to make sure I have the teams right in that regional. Yeah. Some of the local reporters for Florida yesterday tweeted about that Colby Shelton didn't hit. He didn't throw during their practice day, and he was still bandaged up pretty good. So that could be, I don't want to say mind games, because I think you'd probably want him to practice, but that could be just super precautionary. But it suggests to me that more likely, even if he is available, it's going to be he's going to be limited, I guess, is what I would say. So look, I've been burned this season kind of doubting Florida because of like, oh, the injuries have to matter at some point. I feel that way again. Part of it's I also really like this Coastal Carolina team, but so I'm going to say no, they don't win the regional, but like I don't think any of us have the right to be shocked if they do win the regional. Like that's just been Florida this year. Patrick asks, who do you think Kentucky will start, Cleaver or Gramps McKay? Obviously, I don't have some of the data that like the coaches have, so like they'll make a more informed decision than I will. But I'd start Cleaver if I were them. But I get a feeling that it might be McKay just because of the experience factor. Now, I don't think McKay at South Dakota State pitched in regionals at all, but you know, just being old, right? And you know, I've talked to Nick McKay, like he is kind of an unflappable veteran guy who's just real laid back. So I like either choice for Kentucky. I think either could do the job. I get the feeling it's McKay, but I might go Cleaver. He's just been their best guy this year. Sven talks about Northeastern. We shame on Northeastern today. He's talking from Mississippi State perspective. 27 win streak, fine, but we play SEC ball and should have no problem with them. That may be like that, and that's what has happened in Northeastern in the past. Is they get into regionals and then teams that are just more traditionally talented have had success against them, but they're good. Like so, if they win that game, it also would not be a shock. Call out says, I think the Athens regional will go to 7 games. What's your thoughts? Oklahoma State and Duke can absolutely mash and have lefties to hit the short porch. Yeah, that's a tough regional too. Like that's a regional to watch for an upset because of the draw. Duke and Oklahoma State both have power. Both teams are going to be fine playing the types of games that sometimes Georgia gets into these games sometimes where they fall behind 3-0 in the first and have to claw back and then ends up 11-9 or whatever. Like Duke and Oklahoma State aren't gonna be bothered by having to play games like that. So that's a tough draw. I think they can mash. Good lefty hitters. I think you nailed it. Like in terms of what makes those teams dangerous. Also, Duke and Georgia kind of built similarly, where you know Georgia has a little more. So what I'm looking for, certainty in the rotation with Leighton Finley and you know Brian Curley is thrown a lot, but there has been some shuffling for Georgia. And when it comes to their bullpen, like they've got so many options. Duke is kind of the same way, where they don't have a lot of guys who started a lot of games. It's very reliever heavy, very like, hey, you know, we got all day. We'll mix and match all day if we need to. So those could be some high scoring games and maybe some slower paced games in Athens. So if it goes 7, I wouldn't be shocked for sure. Call out. ETSU hits a lot of home runs. That's true. Part of that has to be the elevation where the ball flies better. I think it's also true. Do you think Hawkins Field will play long for them, or can they be a problem in Nashville? I think they can be a problem in Nashville. Hawkins, when it warms up, it can. It is not a ballpark that always plays small, but depending on what the weather is, especially if it's warm, the ball can fly there. So I do think ETSU has a chance to be a problem. It's just going to be a matter of can its pitching hold up, right? Against a Vanderbilt offense that's assuming a matchup with Vanderbilt against a Vanderbilt offense that's swinging the bats a little bit better. If you're Vanderbilt, your hope is that ETSU has to burn a lot of bullpen today so that, you know, you at least know that you're going to be able to score plenty of runs against them, even if they do run into some balls. And Vanderbilt's mantra, you know, has largely been, you know, solo home runs don't beat you. And so they're willing to give up some solo shots just to be able to like let it just flush that. Solo home runs happen. They're not going to beat you. That's kind of their mantra. Sam R says, what are the odds K-State can advance to super regionals second straight year? Yeah, they're going to be tricky. Let me scroll to their regional just to make sure, because it's so easy to get confused which teams are which when you're trying to keep up with 16 of them. Austin, that's right. So Texas, UTSA, Kansas State, Houston Christian. Look, on talent, K-State can do it. There's no doubt that Kansas State has the talent to do it. The problem is that sometimes that talent has been undermined by a lack of fundamental baseball. They tend to make ill-timed errors. Sometimes it's free passes on the mound, base running mistakes, things like that. But if they can put together a weekend of great baseball, they're talented enough for sure. But they're going to need to do, like, you can't go into this weekend and not play clean baseball. Like, that's not going to work. Jeremy Scott asked, will they ever have a ghost runner for extra innings in college baseball? They might. It is currently not being talked about. And one of the things about college baseball, it's different than MLB, is MLB can talk about a rule and then decide to do it. And then have it implemented basically immediately. In college baseball, you have to talk about it. Like, ABCA introduce it, the coaches bat it around, it goes to the committee, and there's just like a whole bureaucratic process. So if they were going to, we would see it coming. I think there's a chance. But I think with offense being a little down, at least home runs a little down this year, I don't think the pace of play problem has been as prevalent. But that's because that's part of what it was, is the ghost runner, avoiding those like 15 inning games where it's just like such a slog to get through it. But it is an interesting question. Do you think Cade Fish will be a big piece to Auburn's run if they hope to make one? Yeah, he's going to have to be, right? I mean, he's one of the more talented pitchers they have. And if they're going to get to Omaha, like, he's going to have to be a part of it. Now, is that maybe starting a game 7, like a Monday game if they get pushed there? Yeah, I could see that. Is it a long relief guy in the event of a short start? Could definitely see that. They're going to find, they're going to find whatever role it is that he's best in and just run with that. But he's going to have to be a part of it for sure. I do like the double base. Call out asks. It's just safer. We don't have as many of those interference calls up the right field line. I do like it. I know some folks don't. There is some movement to like maybe pull back on the double bag, but I like it. Jack Beard asked, would that be for the postseason? Are you talking about rule changes, Jack? If so, yes. Like, tend to not have different rules just for the postseason. Some, but rules like that, I imagine, and we'd have to kind of. So, but yes would be the answer there if that's what you're referring to. Do you think Jay Johnson pitches Cade Anderson in game 1, same as Skeens in 23? Yep. And that's the example I use, is like, if you're not going to pitch off in that situation with a Tulane team that had won 14 games or something in the regular season, then you're probably just not ever going to pitch off if you're going to throw Skeens in that game. And it worked out, obviously. They not only won that regional, they won the national title. So, but yes, I would expect him to start whoever he deems to be their number one, and that's going to be Cade Anderson. Vandy Chris says, will LSU Shreveport win and finish the season 59-0? I love that. I love that question because it's unimaginable, 59 straight wins. Like, to not have one game where you just stink and get beaten by somebody else who's good. Incredible stuff there from LSU Shreveport. So let's go yes. Like, let's have fun and just be positive about that. Let's go yes. I don't know much of anything about their team except that they're very good. But let's just go yes. And Jack Beard says Ghost Runner, yeah. So if they do approve that rule at some point, yes, it would apply to the postseason. Scott says everything means nothing got referenced again on one of the Road to Omaha shows. That quote is getting some run, man. Bravo. Yeah, I didn't expect that quote to get as much run as it has, but I'm glad that Chris Burke has found use for it. But it was so true this season, the regular season, man. Like, results just didn't carry over from week to week this year. It was like a big league season where it's just like every series just got flushed and then it's fresh the next week, which made it really unpredictable, but also a lot of fun. And maybe the postseason will be like that too. If so, that would be stressful if you're an SEC fan, maybe, but also a lot of fun. So, all right, going to call it there. 50 minutes in, but it's regional weekend, so we had to go long. Thank you all for joining me here live. I appreciate each and every one of you, your comments, questions, jokes, all that kind of stuff. It's my favorite part of doing this deal is seeing y'all's comments and interacting with you guys. Enjoy the baseball today. Hopefully the rain mostly holds off, and I will talk to you again tomorrow morning to recap Friday's action around the SEC and regionals and preview Saturday's, hopefully for most of the SEC, winners bracket games. I'll talk to you guys then.